Hello, everyone, and welcome to an Adulting with Allen episode of Victory Never Sleeps. Thank you to Gothi East and Folk Builder Savage for covering for me last week. Sounds like they did an awesome job and had a good show for you. I took the week off because my dad came down to visit us, and I had not seen him in quite some time, so it was nice and appreciated that I was able to have some good folks filling in. This week's topic is seasonally appropriate with Thanksgiving upon us tomorrow. Tonight, the Lawspeaker is going to discuss gratitude with us. Before we do, a couple of top of the show notes. I noticed over in the chat that Sierra says the Lawspeaker episodes are the best. So there you go. There's.
It would be rude to argue.
Fair enough. I happen to also be on those episodes, so I don't really have a dog in the fight. Coming up very soon, December the 6th, we have the dedication of Phrasehoff. That is in Austintown, Ohio. It is a once in anybody's lifetime event. It's going to be very well attended. I think we're sitting at 129 people registered at present. Many of us will be there. I believe that the Lawspeaker, myself, and producer Nick will all be in attendance, as well as other AFA luminaries, including our founder, Stephen McNallen, and his lovely wife, Githia Sheila McNallen, and they're very excited to see it. Everybody would love to meet you. So be there if you can. It's going to be well worth it. We'd love to see you there. If you're interested, please reach out to any of our folk builders or myself, and we can get you squared away. But that's coming up on December the 6th. Speaking of Phrasehoff, because I give y'all an update, because that's what I do. And speaking of gratitude, thank you for everyone being so very, very generous. We have had an unprecedented run of generosity, both with the payoff of Njordshof and with the contributions towards Phrasehoff. If everything goes as it ought to, and with our monthly payment, I think we will be 1/3 of the way done with paying off that Hoff before it is even dedicated. And that's tremendous. And it's because you guys being generous. So thank you very much. Right now, if you can see, we have paid $39,247 so far on this Hoff. If you're interested and you're able, runestone.org/donate. We would appreciate any help that we can get. But thank you guys so much. Y'all are awesome, and we're very, very impressed. Speaking of being impressed by people's generosity, GW Farnsworth, as always, coming in with $50 towards the Hoff and $25 towards this broadcast. Thank you. We appreciate you. You are an example to us all. That's what I've got off the jump today. So, other plug. If you're at the dedication, or you can wait and see pictures afterwards, we are all very excited to see the mural that Witten's Fawn has painted there in honor of Lord Frere. Spectacular. I'm very excited to see it in person, and I am excited to show it off to everybody at the dedication, and everybody through pictures afterwards. So that's another exciting note coming up. And with that, Lawspeaker, tell us about gratitude.
Well, thank you, Matt, and I'm happy to be here. And I guess, I'll start by offering my own, litany of gratitude. The wrong word came to mind. I'm grateful to you for allowing me to talk myself into having this series on our broadcast. I sold it to you in a way because I think that it's important to talk about not just the theory of Asatru and the what the gods are and what they should and do mean to all of us, but I think a practical approach to living is an important aspect, and I'm grateful that you allowed me to talk you into seeing that. And I'm grateful to Nick for working diligently behind the scenes, making stuff happen that I have no idea how to do, but it always seems to work exactly right. So Nick, thank you very much for doing everything that you do. And to all the folk builders and volunteers and donors of to the AFA, everybody does a little bit. Like Pam McCluskey, for example, you know, she cooks a wonderful meal at every for every get together that we have there at Jornshof, and it, you know, that those sorts of things make make things happen, and it makes life pleasant when everybody does their little bit, and we should all be more expressive of our gratitude in that way. It did remind me, oh, I guess we are right back. Be right back. So it did remind me in a in a certain way, my mother was one who, and I know that I sort of slighted her in this way, and the last couple of weeks I've been feeling especially bad about that. She always, if she gave a gift, which she always did to anyone in her church that had a baby or got married or anything, had one of those life events. I think even a lot of the kids who graduated high school while she was in the church, she always gave them a little gift, and her minister always told those people to write Miss Sarah a thank you note, because, although that is a lost art, right? I don't realize it's like the 1830s, you got to sharpen your turkey feather and dip it in the inkwell and send off this folded up piece of parchment in the Pony Express. But those are the kinds of things that have a lot more meaning, and those expressions of gratitude and appreciation can have a lasting resilience. I meant to actually have the thing that I could show you, the last one, and actually one of the other things that brought to mind, and it just was coincidence that with this episode coming up, but with we get a bill every year for Odenshof, for the Odenshof district, that is the volunteer fire department that maintains the fire suppression out there in that district. And so I threw them in like an extra $50, and they sent me back a letter signed by a couple of their members. Thanks for the extra. And that's what generates gratitude, is going above and beyond, and just a little gesture of appreciation keeps it coming back. In another one of those personal moments, Matt, I probably don't even remember. It was one of those things that we were at Thorshoff. I think it may have been this past year, and you just looked at me and go, I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you do for us. And obviously it echoed with me to have you take just that extra couple seconds and say, thank you for occasionally being useful. So, so it, my heart grew 3 sizes that day. So thank you for remembering to do that. And the other important thing that I wanted to bring up on the front end of this discussion about gratitude, well, 2 things. The first is, I think that one of the reasons I think that gratitude is a proper topic for adulthood is that children, adolescents, they just take everything for granted. Everything is just presented to them as a given. There's always food. The lights are on. There's a roof over your head. There's gas in the car. And children are not required to think about those sorts of things. Most of us in this modern era, our children don't, just never have to worry about how all that stuff's going to work. So they are allowed during their childhood and minority to take those sorts of things for granted. But once you become an adult and you know how much work goes into the churn for those sorts of things to happen, clean clothes don't just appear in the dresser. There's some mechanism underneath that happens so that can go. I think in the bigger political picture, the ungratefulness that we see expressed against Western civilization is sort of an adolescent rebellion. Like all this stuff just sort of magically happened. Like we were, as if the thousands of generations of literal blood and sweat that made our progress and liberty what it is today, that's all ignored by certain elements of our society who just take all that for granted, like, as if it popped into existence 5 minutes ago, just for their benefit. Air conditioning, refrigeration, internal combustion, illumination, those sorts of things made this soft life possible. And we should honor that sacrifice that came from our progenitors by and express our gratitude by maintaining their civilization in a way that's recognizable and can carry on to our descendants what that all should look like by keeping this civilization intact. And then more narrowly, in particular in the Asatru Folk Assembly and some of the disloyalty that we've seen among some of our former folk, I think that too shows a lack of gratitude, among other things. I think, and I tie those two things together, that gratitude generates loyalty. For example, I'm grateful for the amount of work, Matt, that you do. Because it's a lot of, and I think a lot of people know, but maybe I don't really know, the 80 or 120 hours a week that you put in to keep this looking effortless, and many of these people who have broken off from the AFA to do their own. I'll eliminate the pejorative. To do their own, to take their little splinter sect and go sit in the corner by themselves, they would never have known each other for the most part without having come through the AFA. They would not know the proper way. They would never have been introduced to the proper way to interact with the gods without the inspiration and instruction that has come through the Asatru Folk Assembly, through our founder, Steve McNallen, through your work, through our dedicated Gothar, and the efforts of our folk to make this better and to make it work in the way that it does, and to take that work and go in some separate direction. I think not only certainly is disloyal, but I think it displays an adolescent attitude of just lack of appreciation for the fact that Mr. McNallen brought this into existence. We are doing our best to carry on the work that he began, and I think that we are doing it in the best way that may possible. I think we punch way above our weight class, both in terms of the impact that we have on the wider discourse on the in the civilizational movement, and in the religious discourse that we have that centers around the efforts that we all make um, to to have these hofs and give food to people and demonstrate to the world what Asatru is and what noble Aryan people are and ought to be. And so they should be grateful for that and should have been. And they should have been loyal to the work that we did. And I'm not saying that we're not above criticism. I take criticism, I give criticism, we make mistakes. But in the great grand scheme of things, like with my parents, right? They did some stuff that I would have done differently and did do differently when I was raising my kids. I'm sure my kids think incorrectly that I made some mistakes raising them. But at the same time, we, my ex-wife and I, impressed upon our children the idea of gratitude. And certainly one of the ways that we did that, and I would recommend it to anyone with children or even adults. One of the things that we used to do is at many of our dinners that we had together, we always ate together as a family. But at many of our dinners, we would go around the table and say what you're thankful for, for the food, for the lights being on, for the for the teachers that were teaching the kids. We were all grateful for many things, but that's a sort of thing that can easily be taken for granted if it's not impressed on young formative minds. And that's kind of the spiel that I wanted to open with. And then, with that, I'll remind those listeners out there that, we always think of this as cumulative. So if you have other questions about that or how any of this interacts with that or any of the other prior topics that we've talked about here or anywhere else, I am passingly familiar with the lore as well. So if you want to throw a softball at me, I would take that as well.
Well, while we've got a break, I don't want to jump in. I think that you diagnosed a lot of the flakiness of some of our people and the disloyalty that we see sometimes accurately when you talked about it being a type of an adolescence or an adolescent kind of response to things. And I think we've seen that a lot. So, just upfront, disloyalty is bad. People who are disloyal are turds. We don't like them. But that said, we do like them when they wash themselves off and want to come back and figure it out. And we have a lot of people that have gone through the step of, thinking they know better, thinking the grass is greener somewhere else, and realizing, in whatever time it takes them, that it's really not. And that the things that it's kind of about that taken for granted, they assume in their head how things should be. And full disclosure, I was very much like that when I first joined and when I first got involved in Asatru. Not to the point where I was disloyal by any means, but I was in my 20s and we should do this different and that different and this other thing's different and all this. And I thought, because this is something that is a big problem for our young men today. They spend a lot of their time in their head. We have very smart people, but the smartness is not seasoned with wisdom. And so in a vacuum, under the conditions they imagine in their head and in their imagination, yeah, of course they know the right thing to do. And it's like on TV. If you're writing the script, then of course your hero can always be right because you're creating the scenario. But in real life, when you do things, and I appreciate that a number of months back you brought to mind President Roosevelt's, not the commie one, President Roosevelt's quote about the man in the arena, because we are in a world that is disproportionately critic heavy, and social media and our current discourse and just how things are lend themselves very well to that, or to fostering a perpetual criticism of things, but not really a balance and actually going out and doing stuff. So many things that we appreciate all take really hard work. And one of the things that's interesting to me, and this cuts both ways, but it's something I mention, a number of times. And Alan, you've been around long enough to know the truth of this, whereas a lot of people don't. It's funny the things that people just assume happen or ought to be. And I don't fault anybody for this. You don't know what you don't know. But a lot of the times people will reach out very eager, like wondering if we have a Hoff within 30 minutes of them.
Right.
And they're like shocked and like surprised that we don't. And it's weird because that's so bittersweet. It's strange because that's so bittersweet. And thank you for keeping us mindful of word usage. I think it's really important, and it keeps our head in the game. On the one hand, the fact that we have in 10 years gotten 5 Hoffs is amazing. And I'm very grateful for that. The fact that we've set the expectation that, no, of course Hoffs are things. Hoffs should be everywhere. Of course we have Hoffs. It doesn't occur to people new to this that there was a time not so long ago where we didn't have any Hoffs. That's beautiful and a wonderful thing. It's also frustrating to some of the old timers, like, back in my day. But again, I do think it goes to gratitude, because that's hard work. Every time someone wants day one to roll into an established community of Asatru or in their area, they don't factor in that every place there is that healthy community started with nobody, and then one person saying, hey, I wish we had more people doing this. I will invite people over. I will host something at my house. I will get people together at a park or a restaurant. I will do it again and again when people flake out or are discourteous or don't show up or it doesn't work out the way I want it to. I'll keep going until momentum takes hold. And there's a lot of those people that have stuck it out, been consistent, and by their hard work, we're able to have the nice things that we have. And so I'm very thankful to those people. And, you mentioned some folks, and I think it's, good a time as any to mention a couple of things and a couple of people. Producer Nick, I say this, and there's a bit of competitiveness, so I hesitate to, but I will say that Nick is firmly top 5. But if I'm being honest, I think man hours put in, Nick probably puts in the most hours per week making the Asatru Folk Assembly happen than anyone else, myself included. And Nick, thank you very much. A couple of other people that I don't know get all the shine that perhaps they deserve. Somebody else that has put in a lot of work, especially over this last year, is folk builder Chris Savage. A lot of the stuff he does is behind the scenes, helping me with a variety of different things, doing history work, doing a lot of stuff that I don't know that you guys all see. And I think it shines when he is on the program. But Chris does a lot for us and for this, and so we appreciate that. All of our folk builders do this and make this work. And I don't know if everybody realizes, but there's, an ongoing work-related discussion all day, every day on implementing our mission and making this happen. And our folk builders are so vital and so very much appreciated. You guys are awesome. I think that our founder, Steve McNallen, gets a lot of praise and a lot of shine, but I think he is always due more. There is something uniquely special and something that I and we all should be uniquely grateful for when a pioneer steps out where there is nothing and makes something happen. And the fact that that something is tended to and makes it, 50 years down the line to thrive and be healthy, that takes courage and commitment and vision and a lot of things that it takes a very rare breed to not only realize the need for those things, but then to go out and shape that into the world around them. So to Steve, we should all be very grateful, and I certainly am. I try to make sure I tell him as much as often as I can, but also somebody that for, since the very beginning of the Asatru Folk Assembly and up through and continuing, and I'm sure will be so for the rest of her life and beyond, Sheila McNallen has been, in a lot of ways, the beating heart of this forever. Her motherly, feminine way of making note of each and all of our members and their families and the situations they're in and the struggles they go through, and weaving together those bonds that really make the AFA such a family. Very, very grateful for that. And in a lot of ways, and I've said this before, Alan, I am tremendously grateful for you and the stuff that you do and the work that you put in and the advice and the counsel that you give me on things. Those of you who are just listening in or may not know or whatever, Alan has been there as, someone that I go to for counsel since day one of my administration. And he is very often the wheat to my frosted, as the mini wheat goes. And it's one of those kind of good signs that something is a good idea, is if he and I are both excited, if he and I are both exuberant about something, then chances are it's a pretty good deal. But that has helped me in a lot of ways. It's funny that, the title of this series, the Adulting with Alan, may sound cheesy or whatever, but I really wanted to go with it because Alan is who I go to for adulting advice often on different things. And that advice has been invaluable. Also, something that I think a lot of people don't realize, Alan is the reason that we have Baldur's Off. During that process, Alan saw a lane opening in a possibility. If we had enough cash on hand at the right time, we could go ahead and swoop in and make a purchase on something. And his planning and vision on that was the reason that in 2020 we got 2 Hoffs that year. And that's
big cash for Baldur's Off.
Well, that's the thing. And that was a rare opportunity that, hasn't come since, may not come again. That was a perfect storm of things. But you read that in the weave of Orlog, and you saw it coming, you prepped for it, and you had us ready. And that's why we got 2 Hoffs that year, and that's why we have Baldur's Off. So thank you for that. It's unsung. I don't think a lot of people know that, but that's absolutely 100% the truth.
I had fun getting the permit, though, so it wasn't all work.
So that's the thing too. It is really cool and big timey to have a legitimate, bona fide, board certified lawyer on the team of things. It's nice when we did have to advocate for our permit in Murdoch to be able to send up our high-powered lawyer from Florida to go and educate those people on things. That was a really good feeling and a kind of a a neat turning point in the development of Asatru in the modern place. It really was kind of I don't know, it was a mark of maturity and competency on our part, and it was facilitated by our law speakers. Thank you for that also.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could go up there and represent the right face of our folk and our people.
Well, so while I have the floor, I'm going to mention something else. For our international audience, this might seem odd. A number of years ago, we had like 3 Brazilian members that got very angry when I, in the AFA voice, was celebrating Thanksgiving. They're like, that's Christian. Vikings aren't thankful for things. And it was such a silly thing. And I get from an international point of view, perhaps seeing Thanksgiving as a Christian holiday, but in the United States, it's really like it's explicitly not. That's one of the interesting phenomenon about it, is it's intentionally meant as a non-religiously specific holiday. And it's a special thing because it's an opportunity for everyone to take stock of things that they are thankful for. And yes, it's implied that you do that in a religious way towards your gods. But the initial instance of it was, pagan children of the forest Indians and their Christian counterparts, they were being thankful to the great buffalo or whatever they're thankful to. And it's a nice thing. It is a good and noble thing for people to be thankful and show gratitude for the blessings in their life. And I think we are always very keenly aware of grievances and grudges and misfortunes and stuff that we're angry about or that we feel slighted by. But I think far too little attention is paid in our lives to the things that we appreciate, the blessings that we have in our life, and the people and the powers that provide those for us. And I am tremendously thankful to my AFA family, to all my fellow AFA leaders, and profoundly thankful to the ICEER for their blessings and all of the wonderful things that we have in our life collectively as the AFA, and that I have in my life personally. Very thankful for that. And I'm excited to be mindful of that, and specifically be mindful of that tomorrow. Happy Thanksgiving, people.
Happy Thanksgiving for all of us.
So,
I had never really considered that, that aspect of it, of Thanksgiving being, because it's always been sold to me as a secular, very much a secular holiday. But it's a pretty direct adaptation of, just a harvest festival, which, there is nothing more pagan than being thankful for the bounteous fruits that are given to us by the Earth Mother. So, pish tosh.
Yeah, it's silly. I think that too many people, and again, this is part of that adolescent ingratitude. I think a lot of people come to some realization in their life that they don't like Christianity, they need something different, and then they don't know a lot about Asatru or about Viking culture or whatever, and they jump in immediately full barbarism and throw all the baby out with the bathwater. Anything clean or dignified or proper or nice, Vikings don't do that. We raid and pillage and burn stuff. It's silly and ridiculous, but I understand how people start there. It's tragic when they stay there, but I get starting there at some point. but I don't think enough is paid to that. Like you mentioned, it's absolutely an evolution of the ancient harvest festival that is all about being thankful and reverent for the bounty of the year. And that is a religiosity that existed in Europe far, far before the coming of Jewish Christianity into our homelands. It's absolutely one of the things. It's interesting, just comes to mind, the Sigdrifamal prayer, hail the earth all giving.
Right.
The idea of appreciating the giving nature of divinity of the world around us and the forces within it is essential to Asatru.
In direct contrast to the Christian idea, which is dominion over the earth. We beat the earth into submission, as their idea, as opposed to working cooperatively to receive the gift of the gods and give back in return, and like.
Yeah, something that's, I think, Whitten Erickson has, crystallized in a way that, hasn't been presented before or whatnot. Our worship practice is all about the gift cycle between the gods and us and the gods infinitely. And yes, it is that, but it's really important to be grateful and make note of they started it. Like the first giving of things to us were those gifts of Odin, Vili, and Ve that made us us. They initiated that gifting cycle way back when. And if not for the gifts that they bestowed on us, none of us would have the things that we have or be here today and do this. So having a disposition of gratitude towards the Aesir is completely noble and appropriate, and something that we should be, we should always be conscious of. And I think that once people get past that adolescent phase, they very much are.
I certainly went through it. As you say, back in my day, I mean, any gathering of Asatru was a long discussion about the anger that we felt for having our rightful heritage taken away and misused and so forth. But we have matured, I think, as a faith to now where, sure, that happened, but now we're in a different place, and again, with gratitude for the liberty that's bestowed on us in this country, where we can, express our own religiosity, where we're not subject to severe penalties, for openly worshiping a non-Christian God. I mean, that would have been unheard of 500 years ago, and certainly would be unheard of in many religious countries today, and that practice a different type of religion. So the liberty that we have, and I have often expressed gratitude in Sumbel and elsewhere for the founding fathers who brought forth on this land a new nation that allowed us to have these expressions of liberty. We all forget that it should be liberty under duty. That it's not all rights. There are responsibilities that come with citizenship in this great republic. But it should also be, again, with an idea of gratitude. Yes, these things are imperfect, but they are a far cry better than anything else that's ever been promulgated in the last 2,000 years that we know of. I mean, there was part of the Roman Republic that would have been good to live in if you were Roman.
There's it's interesting, and it is unfortunate that we notice gratitude when we see, or that we often are reminded of gratitude when we see counterexamples. I think that we all spend a lot of our time noticing stuff that's wrong with, specifically those of us living in the United States. There's a lot wrong with it. There's a lot of bad things that go on in our country and in our government, and I get that. But it's times where you look to our neighbors to the north in Canada, to folks in the United Kingdom, and you become very grateful for not living there. And I think that those people can probably look at some, savage Central African nations and other places that they're probably real grateful they don't live in also. And it's just, I guess the point I'm trying to make, and it's not really a political one so much as it's all too often we forget to be grateful for things until we notice a stark contrast to people who have it worse than us. And that's unfortunate. We should have gratefulness and gratitude at the forefront of our mind much more often than we tend to. And that's a thing. And I'll admit this or put this out there. It's something I try really hard to remind myself of in managing the duties of the AFA. Often, because they're immediate, I spend a lot of time focusing on putting out fires or fixing problems or, dealing with things that aren't optimal, because those are things that there's an urgency to fix or to do something to address. It's important to spend time noticing all of the things that are optimal and that are amazing and that are functioning well. And it's unfortunate. It's like people with a great number of kids that focus all their attention on, one that's difficult or that's struggling instead of the ones that are, all the others that are being very successful. So it's important to just stop and notice sometimes wow, we have some really good stuff and that's amazing, and being thankful of it. I think we all have an abundance of good things in our life if we stop and take note. But it's not an automatic response. It's something we have to train ourselves to do, and train ourselves to look with an eye of gratefulness at times. So, I would encourage everybody to, when you notice yourself being grumpy about things, take the effort to itemize the good things too. And I think that it changes perspective quite a bit. At least it does for me when I get in a particularly grumpy frame of mind.
No, you're absolutely right. It is all too easy to focus on the rough spot and not see all the smooth that is all around it. One thing that I have been forgetting to say, but don't want to let it go unsaid, for all of you members out there listening, one way that you can express gratitude to the ACER and to your ancestors for bringing you into this place is to go to your HOF, go to the local HOF. The work that we've put in to get this is a testament to all of our hard work and dedication. And it's always and more makes more. So you would be well served yourselves to go and be part of the HOF community, because it is I know at Yortshof, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere. Like the regulars who come there, I mean, we are very much like a big extended family, and you can be part of that extended family and show Mr. Flavel how grateful you are for his 14-hour days by coming in and joining us for food and celebration. because that is a right that can no longer be denied to you.
It's one of those things that can seem daunting when you're in a funk or you're lazy or whatever the deal is. I really want to go, or whatever it is that you're thinking. People don't leave the Hoff disgruntled that they made the journey. That doesn't happen. And I'm trying to think in my head. I can't think of instances where people are displeased that they went to the Hoff. It is rejuvenating for your spirit. It puts you back in sync with the right things and the right order of things. It is something that I'm very grateful that I'm able to do, and that everyone I know who attends their local Hoff is grateful for. And I want you guys to have the chance to be grateful for it too. So make that effort to do that. We got a couple of questions. First one is a Nick request that we answer one that I guess was already answered last week, but not by us.
Okay.
Hey there, question for the show tonight. How has being Asatru impacted your role in your families, be they as sons, parents, husbands, siblings, etc.? Do you find that being Asatru inspires you to do things in your familial relationships that you may not otherwise do? Thanks. Alan, how does Asatru affect your familial interaction?
Well, first of all, I think it reinforces the idea of the, I think it's the Roman term, the pater familias. This is a patriarchy, and I'm not embarrassed to advocate for that. Women are our equals, almost. They have a say, unlike in other faiths and civilizations. We honor and respect what they do, but in the end, the man is the final say. I think it, and it's funny because, I think we talked a fair bit about this during the episode that we did on child rearing, where, we talked about the delicate balance within Indo-European or Indo-Aryan child raising approach. We don't want to break our children's will, and that's it's a delicate balance in there, because I know it would be easy to to overdo the aspect of obedience, which is expected in other faiths and other civilizations. The absolute obedience to authority is not how we raise our children. At the same time, they have to respect who we are. They have to respect that we have some vague idea of whether the stove is hot, whether you should go play in traffic. I mean, adults are in charge for a reason. So, but at the same time, you want to raise your child with a healthy respect for rightful authority, but without bending their will. That too is one of those aspects of certainly informed the way that I approached raising my boys. To allow them to develop their own will and their own conscience. I think it also gives us the idea of courage, to face the things that we know are unpleasant, but it's but it's still better to face those things with courage, and just overall to take an approach where you recognize that in the end, it is your honor, it is your family's honor that is at stake. And I would never advocate for the way that the Chinese are doing things with that cultural credit system or whatever, the everywhere surveillance, Big Brother style thing that they're doing. certainly given the ones who are in charge of that. But I think it is important for us to understand that we do have a lateral, a horizontal relationship to the people around us. That when one of us AFA folk does something that disrespects the entire culture, it reflects poorly on all of us, and we have that obligation to maintain decorum and a sense of integrity, recognizing that when we act, the world sees each of us as the only Odinist that they know, and so so that too is one of the things that you just have to bear in mind, that we have to be a step above, not only because we are a step above, but because we carry the knowledge with us that whatever we do reflects on all of us.
So you covered a ton of it. Before I get started, Michael in Indiana donated $20 towards Phrasehoff payoff. Thank you so much. We are grateful for your donation. Appreciate your generosity. Thank you,
Michael.
And I want to be fair. I think some of this is true for most faiths, but being a religious person as opposed to being an atheist, it reinforces your obligations to your family. You are entrusted with a responsibility. Specifically being Asatru, you know that your obligations and duties aren't just to your wife or your siblings or your living parents or your children, but also to your ancestors and all those who came before you. One of my, duties as a husband and as a father is to live in such a way that my grandmother and my grandfather would be proud of me and appreciate me carrying through the lessons that they taught me. And in turn, that makes their parents proud of them, even though both of those generations are long since beyond the veil. We're the keepers of something sacred passed down to us that it's our job to pass forward to future generations. Our, existence isn't a finite, nihilistic, 80-year lifespan. We are a link in a chain that goes back indefinitely, and it's our obligation to send it forward the best we can towards infinity. It's also, as Alan mentioned, it's our, we don't believe in equality. Equality isn't true. There's no two things that are equal. But it's our job as men to lead our families, to look out not just for, physical needs of our family, but to instruct them and take care of them spiritually. When in our power to do so, to instill in our children and our spouse the values that are pleasing to our ancestors and our gods, to help foster a relationship between our gods and our children in a way that sticks and in a way that is meaningful to them, to teach them our traditions, to be an example of positive Asatru to them, so that as they grow and they develop into the world, they have a solid faith to cling to hearken back to, and to have as a touchstone of how things ought to be in their life. So I think all of those things, it fundamentally affects who I am as a father, as a husband. It also affects, who I am as a son, and making sure that, even if it's difficult with with your parents, if there's differences in worldview and values and religion and a lot of things, recognizing the sacrality of family and going the extra mile to fulfill your familial obligations, even, even when it's not easy, even when it's uncomfortable or awkward, or, you don't think you got a lot in common, or whatever your situation is, making that time, because again, fidelity to your elders and to your parents, that's a duty of an Asatru, and something that I think is really important.
It absolutely is, and that's and it should not go unsaid that as you were going through that men absolutely have the duty, the obligation to lead in a way that is completely almost selfless, in that way that that we have to put the needs of the family to the fore, and in this atomized, narcissistic, individualistic culture that we find ourselves in at the moment, a lot of that stuff has been lost. And so I guess I'm expounding on the idea of the patriarchy, because too many people, when they hear that, they think, is some kind of absolute overlordship. And it's exactly the opposite. The man rules as the servant of the family. Just like, Matt, you are the patriarch of the AFA right now, but you rule in a way that is a benevolent dictatorship with the needs of the all at the forefront.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that so often people decouple authority from responsibility. There's a whole lot of people want to be the boss of stuff, but a relatively small portion of those actually want to lead and take care of the responsibilities that entails. And we've all seen that in our lives in a variety of ways. One of the other things that I do think is very important is, and so I'll go ahead and open up the next question, because I think it flows into this really well. Next question is from an Aryan lens. Why is it so important to do your absolute best work? Whether you're flipping burgers, being a mechanic, or a nuclear scientist, etc., no matter the pay. And it comes to something that you said earlier that I want to expound upon. It will cut two things here. So, and I guess also to a comment in the chat about, I'd mentioned to be a positive example of positive Asatru, and folk builder Ron Boardman's like, if it's not positive, then I don't believe it's Asatru. And I agree with you. But to the untrained eye that doesn't know any better, you may be the only Asatru they know. To your children, when they go out into the world, they're going to associate you with Asatru. If you're a terrible parent and you're Asatru, that's going to leave a taste in their mouth in relationship to our gods and our faith. If you are an amazing dad and you're Asatru, they're going to attribute some of that greatness towards our gods and our faith. In your workplace, people don't know a lot of Asatru. You may be the only person they've ever known that does this strange worship Odin stuff. What? But if you show them you're a serious person and you are an honorable person and a good, valuable person, and they see your merit as a human on that, it makes them treat our faith with a much greater degree of seriousness. We are so relatively few in the world right now. Your performance in all aspects of your life is a reflection on our gods and our faith, and on all the rest of us that practice Asatru. And that's an important responsibility. And it goes to the other thing I was going to say that, I neglected to mention on the previous question. the gods are watching. We want to do things to attract their attention, but it's twofold. We don't want to attract their attention if we're a dirtbag. We want to attract and seek their judgment, but then we also want to be worthy of their approval and of them being proud of us. And that is an important obligation. You know, our gods aren't, you know, the creepy stalker looking at the minutia of life all the time thing that sometimes gets expressed in Christianity. But when we invoke them and we invite them into our lives, we want to make them proud of us. And we want to do deeds and live in a way that they appreciate and, you know, recognize as good. And I think that being aware that we are accountable to something greater than ourselves is a very important thing. You know, I thank you, Alan, for saying the things you said about my leadership in the AFA. And one of the things that there's not a day that goes by, but I don't think there's a 6-hour period that goes by if I'm awake that I'm not very aware of my accountability to the gods and very much conscious of trying to be worthy of that and to make them proud. And I hope that never changes. And, you know, if it does, I hope that you Tiger Crane kick me out of the big chair, because I don't, you know, I wouldn't want to be in that spot. But I'm inspired by the chart behind you.
We'll start with a good stern finger wagging.
Well, no, it's one of those things. Leadership, be it in your family, be it in whatever you do, being aware of those who came before you, being aware of all of those under your charge, under your leadership, and being aware of that the gods look on at the things that we do should give you a sense of place and a sense of duty and obligation. And if it doesn't, then you're doing it wrong. So the constant presence of that in my life is something that is very much related to my being an Asatru. It's funny. This has been my life for most all of my adult life. I've been Asatru for 24 years now. It's hard for me to conceive of myself outside of that. So when asked, like, well, how does Asatru affect X, Y, and Z? And I don't, this isn't braggadocious, I don't mean it that way, but something I've tried very hard for the last 2 decades to do is to merge my life as an Asatru with all of the other pieces of my life to where they all work together and they're all, you know, inseparable. Like you couldn't separate where the non-Asatru Matt is, because that doesn't exist. It's woven into all of the parts of who I am and the life that I live. I've been able very successfully to decouple, you know, to not have any of those. Everything works in synergy. In modern America, because of the world that we live in, a great many of us are very compartmentalized. Different person at work, different person at home, different person at the Hoff, different person in all of these things. And it's been incentivized for you to not express who you truly are in the public sphere sometimes. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to construct my life in such a way that I can be, I don't want to be arrogant and say fully integrated, but I can be increasingly fully integrated into that. And my life is so much better for it. And I would encourage everyone to do that to the degree that you're able, and, you know, seek ways to do that increasingly if you can.
And one of the ways that I've expressed it, and I think you have too, is that Asatru is not something that I do. It's something that I am. So when we talk about how does it influence all this other stuff, you know, there are certainly elements of stoicism that come about through in that way. I think it's very much, part of my path included a time where I really considered myself a Taoist, which is very much influential on the way that I approach my life as an Asatruer. But so one, and I'm the same way. I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I feel like in fact, I feel like that's an important part of Asatru practice, and one of the reasons why I started this series, one of the reasons why I try to bring these matters to everybody's to the forefront of their mind, because that's exactly, I think it's the healthiest way to approach socialization, your psyche, your spirituality, is to do it all as an integrated whole. And I think that the Aryan practice of Asatru provides exactly the right balance of all of those elements of psychology and sociology and leadership and forthrightness, and all those things. I think are the most important way. They're the best way to live a good life, and that's why I keep my shoulder to the wheel like I do, because I want more people to experience the joy that we have felt in being able to live this life.
Absolutely. Just side note, we're now at 130 registered attendees for dedication of Freeshof. So that's awesome. It's really kind of blown me away how large that attendance is becoming. It's very auspicious for the start there at that Hof. So go ahead and take the first swing at this, Alan. How have you combated fear-mongering of Asatru, or do you feel it's not important to deal with?
You said you're going to take the first swing at it, or do you want me to?
No, I offered you the first swing if you would so choose.
Well, I can say, a couple of things. I am self-employed, so I don't have to worry about my boss outing me or to go through that sort of thing, because my boss knows what I do. At the same time, every client who hires me is my boss. So some of them have asked me about my hammer and about the other representations of Asatru that I have in my office in there. And I'm always honest and forthright about, what it is I am and what I do. I think it's also important that people understand that that while we are an exclusive religion, we do that only in an inward looking way. Like we're not practicing folkish Asatru in order to exclude anyone. That's not the purpose of it. The idea is this is an ethnic religion, just like any other ethnic religion. It is exclusive to Indo-European people. If people are going to be angry about that, they are not going to hear any kind of explanation. So nothing you say is going to turn that in your favor. So you just have to give it to them, and they may come around to it at some point. Anyone with any degree of receptivity to rational argumentation will understand that. I've allayed many people's fears with explanation very much in keeping with what I just said. And, you know, the other side of that is to emphasize that, you know, that we practice an internal faith, but it's not about, but we don't do it out of any spirit of hate or malevolence. We love our people, we love our folk way, and full stop. You know, so it's not about not doing other stuff, it's about doing our stuff. I mean, that I think is the most important thing, is to just express it in a positive way, and for other people to see you in a positive light. And a lot of times it's simple stuff. You know, an example, and I've relayed this before on the show, but I was walking into Lowe's one afternoon, and you know, there was a piece of plastic trash on the ground right in front of me, and I didn't even have to break stride. I just scooped down and picked that up and put it in the trash can. And this lady's standing there, and she goes, "That was so nice. You know, that, hey, aren't you an attorney? You did my bankruptcy." And so, like, just in that one moment, it integrated that whole thing of caring for the earth and respecting my community and doing the right thing, albeit it didn't cost me very much in that particular moment, but it's being a good citizen and portraying those values and allowing your goodness and rightness as a person to overcome whatever false labels that people would try to put on us.
Yeah, and so we get it. Don't think for a second that we're, you know, being PC or whatever else. I get it. Lots of us have different stuff we don't like, and plenty of things we're opposed to, but we're not defined by our opposition to things. And I think that's really important, that we define ourselves by what we're for. All the things that we are opposed to they're there out of circumstance. That's not the fundamental to our existence. That is a circumstance we find ourselves in that we have to combat. Define yourself and mean this and exude this from your pores. Define yourself by the things you are for, by the things you love, not by things you hate or by things you don't like or whatever you are currently opposed to. Define yourself by what you are for. And as the Asatru Folk Assembly, we absolutely do that. Best thing that I have found that combats anti-Asatru fear-mongering: be a noble, good person. Not only that, be that and wear your hammer and be vocally Asatru when it's appropriate for that to come into the conversation. You don't need to yell that at people all the time, but when other people are expressing their religiosity, don't shy away from expressing yours. When people associate the nice person in front of them that they've known and that they have a good relationship with our faith and our values, it makes a very sharp contrast with whatever preconceptions they might have or whatever, you know, misleading media narrative there may be. I don't ever personally experience Asatru fear-mongering. Now, as the AFA, sometimes we get that, but it's very quickly dispelled by real-world interaction with AFA members. That's happened in the only time that we have. I don't think that we have ever had an organic negative experience with our community of any kind of Asatru fear issue. But the media has generated fear concerns in Minnesota outside of Baldershoff, a little bit around Thorshoff, and the tiniest bit when we first opened at Njordshoff. All of those things have been very easily and relatively quickly dispelled by us being noble, good nice Aryan people, and it's very quick. It is a long, there is a struggle to convert people or get people to agree with us on all the things, but it's not hard to get them not to be scared of us.
Right.
That's just showing up and being a normal human being and not being a jerk. And that happens very, very quickly. I recall with Njordshof, I don't know if Shaniqua is the black version of Karen. We had two black ladies in White Springs. For those of you who don't know, we were literally on the wrong side of the tracks in White Springs there. We were in the darker part of that community, and there's these two black ladies that I guess like taking walks near the Hoff, and they'd read, whatever the media has to say about us, and were very concerned. And they expressed the concerns really respectfully, honestly, on Facebook. They, requested to talk to me about some things, some concerns they had. And I guess they'd let it said, hey, we walk our dogs by this place, or we walk by there with our kids, and we're scared. We don't know what you guys are going to do, and all this other stuff. We had a food pantry there, I believe, like a week after dedication, and immediately it cleared up any issue. They were all very gung-ho. They needed to speak to me about their concerns. We had the food pantry, and they disappeared. And I reached out. I said, hey, I haven't heard from you, but you were going to talk to me about some questions that you had. They're like, no, we saw you guys food pantry. We walked by. You guys are great. We're fine. No problem. So the fear mongering is media generated, and it's very easily dispelled by the light of reality. Just don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk. Be a good person. Wear your hammer. Be proudly Asatru, and then be the person that you want them to think that we are. Be that. Be worthy of that.
The person your grandmother wants you to be.
Well, that's the thing. I unabashedly use the term Aryan, and I think a certain segment of our people think it's, like me trying to be edgy or some kind of cool, edgy dog whistle. It's not. It's not. It's refusing to be, bullied into not using something that I think is special, but it's also a sense of pride as a self-identifier of our race and being proud of that. But it's also a benchmark or an admonition to ourselves to be worthy of that, because it means noble. It implies, a radiance to that nobility. We should be that all the time. We should be that when no one's looking, but people are looking. And as long as you are that, and the more of us that are noble, good people that are Asatru, the more easily dispelled any kind of, media-driven fear-mongering is out there. So It's not something, the question is not something, it isn't something to worry about. Don't waste time worrying about it, but do be conscious of being proactively Asatru and putting your best foot forward as you do so. The more of us do that, the easier it is for all of the rest of us. Alan, next question is for you. Are those Tang Sudo forms on the wall behind you?
No, that is the tiger and crane form, which is the second of four forms in my particular system of Hungar. And this is a reproduction of an original printing in from Hong Kong in 1949, and it reads actually across the top, but left to right. Anyone who's interested, I would be glad to teach that to you. A very brief history, since you expressed some interest. The Kung Fu instructor that I had knew dozens of complete systems of Kung Fu, and he had a system that he taught us as a base, and then would let us kind of strive after we got the base sets, would let us branch off in the direction that we found most appropriate. And Hungar is what fit me. It fits my body type. It fits my profile. And I could wax on and on as I sometimes do, although I also wax off the, but it would, but it works for me, and I still do the system. I found that instructor in 1993. And so I did take some time off when I was raising the kids, but so I've been basically practicing this system for, if we clip out the middle part, I've been doing that for 25 years. And, that too is part of I think practicing a martial art is very much in keeping with who I am as an Odinist, as an Asatru, as a follower of the way. It gives me confidence, and it keeps me in shape physically and mentally.
I think that's really important it's hard because so many of our men don't have an avenue for a martial expression of that masculinity, but it's very important that our men keep a martial bearing and a martial mindset, because having it prevents, or it staves off the necessity of manifesting it physically oftentimes. There's another question coming up that I risk bleeding into, but predatory forces in the world look for soft targets, they look for the weak, and they look for the cowardly. If you instill within yourself a bearing of strength, of courage, and of efficacy, it is much more likely that predatory forces will move on to somebody who is softer or easier to deal with. And that has rung true in my life in a lot of ways. I think that every man at least should learn a martial art, and that doesn't have to be an oriental one. There's a lot of different things. Be a wrestler, be a boxer, but something to where your mind is in a tactical setting often, and to where you have confidence in your ability to assert yourself if the need arises. That confidence goes a long way, and it can be, sniffed out by everyone around you. And it's not just in order to strike fear into your foes. It's also to give confidence to your friends and those that look to you that you are someone who has their back and who is, they can feel safe around, especially women and children and, younger people or older people or whatever the situation is. It puts them at ease knowing that you are capable of handling situations. So, I'm very thankful for that in the martial arts that I've studied and been a part of. And I think it's cool that our Lawspeaker is decades deep into the art of the tiger crane. How heavy are those arm weights that you train with?
This is 4 of them. When I use these, I have 5 on each arm. I weighed them up one time. These are the large brass rings, and so I do 10 sets with 5 of these on each arm. I'm trying to work back up where I have more, and I weighed them one time. I can't remember. I think they're about 1.5 pounds a piece.
Well, they make a festive cacophony.
Right. And that's actually part of it, because you have to concentrate with all that clanging going on too.
There you go. Has there been any major media that tried to cover the AFA in a positive way? Of course not. Major media is not geared towards that. Any media that would want to cover the AFA in a positive way domestically in the United States, unfortunately, would by necessity not be major media. We have had a number of interactions with reporters that have expressed that they wanted to cover us in a positive way, but that their editor had given them a mission of talking about racism or talking about the sexy woke focus that, you know, that is the focus of media now. It's not about truth, it's about agendas. I don't mean to say that to be jaded. I don't want to be that guy. It is.
But it
Now,
is.
there's been alternative media people that have had me and others on their shows to do positive things, and that's been really nice. Those have had a relatively small audience, but I appreciate all of them, and that's been very nice. You know, there was I don't want to throw them under the bus, but a major newspaper man out here in the West did an article on us and expressed like, man, I really wish that we could have done an article on you guys 10 years ago when we had like a lifestyles or a religious section, because what y'all do is very interesting. Unfortunately, my editor wants us to do a story on racism, so that is going to be the lens that I'm covering this on. But that's happened a lot. So is what it is. The important thing to say, though, is we have never, to my knowledge, had someone in the media who has doctored what we said or misrepresented it to the point that we were saying something that we weren't intending to say or that wasn't true. So whatever slant they want to put on the story, our presence, our message has been able to be delivered in the words of our people in a good way that has had a good impact, even when the point of the story is to do a hit piece. One of the benefits that we have in the world today, as polarized as it is, and I think that we all see some of the negativity of that polarization, but one of the positive things is people that are going to hate us already. A story about how terrible we are isn't going to make them hate us any different. But there's a lot of people that agree with us and a lot of people that would really like to be with us. And the biggest hurdle we have to growth is that so many people don't know that we exist. Every time our existence is put in front of more eyes of our folk, we gain members and we gain fame in Midgard. And it always helps us. As long as we are able to tell our side and that they're not, doing a deep fake and having us say something we didn't say, it always does work out to our benefit, fortunately. Alan, do you have anything to add on that?
The only thing I would say is a lot of the stories that came out around the Murdoch permitting process around that time, the press was even trying to interview other people, trying to, don't you hate those white people over there? And like, no. I remember there was the one black fellow that they talked to who said, well, as long as they stay in their lane, I guess they're I don't have a problem with it.
Soldier Slim. Big ups to the homie Soldier Slim in somewhere near Linden, North Carolina.
And so, it is only those few woke overlords that try to dictate this narrative. Everybody else, recognizes that the emperor has no clothes, that we are doing not only what is our right to do, but what is right to do. And, the rest of those people, I feel more sorrow for them than anything.
Well, something else that is a result of that, it wakes people up. It wakes a lot of people up. The folks in Murdoch, I get it. If you just Google us and you read whatever hit pieces they do on us, then I understand if somebody is concerned. I probably would be if I were them too. I always wonder, and it's fanciful, but I wonder what our enemies really think that we do. Anybody who comes to our events, and if you don't believe me, test it. Come out to the dedication of Phrasehoff. But we're naming babies and crying and hugging each other and worshiping the gods and
telling stories about our grandparents.
And like raising horns about our beloved grandparents. And I don't know what they think we do, but it's not what we do is not that. So we had a number of people who, one of the articles, and this goes to the press, the lady who wrote the article says, and I quote, "I've gotten a lot of people stirred up about this." No, they go try to generate a problem to then report on the problem. No, people who, one of the founders of the Murdoch Alliance Against Hate came by and apologized to us and said, what a blessing we are to have in their community. We get little notes left in the mailbox about, how nice it is to have us there. And, people have donated extra, heating fuel and stuff because they had an overage just to be nice to us. We've had great interactions.
One of the people from White Springs mows the grass. Like he just, when he drives by and sees our grass needs mowing, says, I'm going to go do these people a solid.
It's really nice. And when they see that and they compare it to the articles written, it wakes people up to the fact that they're being lied to. And there's a benefit to that as well. But yeah, we work with the environment we're in. If we have, if the tables turn and we have media want to do a wonderful, glowing article on us, I look forward to that day. Until then, we appreciate the opportunities that we get because, again, they all bring folk home to us. The Guardian hit piece that they did in Minnesota, where Whit and Brandy, who I saw her in the chat for a minute, I don't know if she's still there. If she is, happy Thanksgiving, Brandy. She did a wonderful job representing us to that situation. And the whole intent was a hit piece on us. That's the single biggest recruitment thing that has occurred certainly in my time as All's-Harrier Gothi, as far as driving members to us. So
now, all that being said, if any of you guys know the producers of 60 Minutes, give them that number.
Sure. That's the other media stance thing. Unless they are overtly dishonest in a way that I know is dishonest, I'm very happy to interact with media in any way that, if they would like to do a story on us, I'm game to do a story anywhere, because again, what I'm going to say is what we believe, and putting it out there in front of eyes that wouldn't normally see it is always a good thing. Next question is kind of interesting. And Alan, you take a first swing at it. Do you think malevolent forces fear the hammer or the sign of it? My daughter likes to grab an extra Mjolnir whenever she spends the night away from us for protection.
The short answer is yes. I think that, and I think it works in two ways. One, I think that the ice giants and other malevolent forces that Thor smashes have both a real and a ethereal existence. And I think that symbols, words, and symbols have the power that we give them. And so that by focusing the ideal of protection and force and strength into this symbol that we wear. I think I think that it both reinforces and creates the fact that that symbol has power, both as a symbol and as an object. And that has always been the way of our folk, that by word and work, we weave the web of weird. And so by saying that it has power and by reinforcing that ideal, I think it absolutely generates power into that. And now, ultimately, that power comes from the Orlog, and it comes from the Ganunga Gap, and it comes from the owned or prana or chi that we generate as people, but to have that, but it acts as a lens. I think the hammer acts as a lens to focus and manifest that power into the plane of Midgard.
Yeah, it's funny because it's such a simple concept and a simple question. The answer is really complicated, and it doesn't have to be, especially for your daughter, for children, for simple people. As Alan said, yes. I don't think yes in the same way that you see in like The Exorcist or something. Like there's like a thing and you like, power of Christ compels you, and you've got the cross and like it burns the flesh of the demon possessed or the vampire or whatever. Dialing it back, do I think that malevolent spiritual forces are scared of the silver around my neck? No. Do I think that they are scared of actual Mjolnir and of Thor? Yes. But the hammer around my neck isn't something I'm going to beat them with a little tiny necklace hammer. That's not the point. It means something. So first, if it is spiritually imbued through ritual and through worship and through things, I think that metaphysical forces see that in a different way than we see that. And I think the object itself, with time and ritual and stuff, exudes a certain potency that I do think they recognize. What else I think they recognize? This is a follower of Thor. This is a son of the Aesir. This person has a makeup and a character that's integrated into their true self and to a line of ancestry that's powerful. This connects them to spiritual forces on the other side of the veil that are also powerful. I think when we invoke the gods into things, malevolent forces recognize that we are in troth with, in allegiance to the Aesir, and that is a cause for concern for them. As I mentioned earlier, that says something about when I was talking about the martial bearing. If you are empowered by taking heart in your religious affiliation, that makes you a less likely subject of being messed with by malevolent forces. All the more so if that symbol is backed by true practice and built relationship that I do think spiritual forces read on you and are aware of. We believe very much in our Filgia, our DC, or spiritual forces beyond the veil that look out for us. The more aligned you are with that, I think that sometimes malevolent spiritual forces make note of that. it's funny. And I hope that I get a little bit of credibility because I don't go off on this too often. And I try to be reserved in it because I think it is something that's worthy of being spoken about seldom, but when spoken about, very serious. So I don't know anybody I don't know if you in your life, listener, whoever is listening to this, knows anybody that you trust has a degree of second sight. But there are people who are more attuned to perceiving the spirit world than the rest of us. It is interesting because around people that are increasingly spiritually attuned, those people often notice that such a person is accompanied by other beings, other things. There are spiritual forces attached to them. I think there is also a certain amount of protection around yourself when you imbue yourself with that spirituality that others perceive as auras, that others perceive in a lot of different ways. But again, we're talking about, I don't feel like that is too fanciful when the question is, do ghosts and goblins fear it? I think that if we're going to go on that plane, then I think it's completely germane to factor in positive things on that.
Absolutely, and I think all those forces that you're talking about, at some level, it's terminology: chi, prana, kundalini, owned, frill. Those are all the same concept that we're talking about, and the more that your personality, for lack of a better word, the more that your soul and personality and life way is integrated into a holistic view, a holistic way of living, so that it is all one unified thing, the more intact your psychic protection is going to be.
And this flows into the next question. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it up because I think it's part of the greater conversation we're having. Do you think a lot of people's problems today are spiritual? A lot of people now don't believe in spirits, so then negative spirits can affect them easier without them noticing anything. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Next question.
So we can talk, and we will after this. We'll elaborate on, do you think that people's problem is spiritual? Yes. But putting that aside, I mean this, and I mentioned it before when people have asked about like demon possession questions. Bad spiritual forces are real, and I think we interpret them differently in different religious traditions, but the phenomenon exists. And this was a contrast, and it is a dig at Christianity, but it's not for the sake of being mean-spirited. It's an important point, I think. If your faith is about how worthless and helpless you are because you suck and you're terrible and everything you do is sinful and bad, the only thing that's good is Jesus. So invoke Jesus and like clench tightly till your hand bleeds on your crucifix because that's the only thing that protects you because you suck. It inherently conditions you to be spiritually weak. When we don't live in that fear of the other all the time, when we have confidence, and as you mentioned in the question, when we have spiritual awareness and keep our spiritual head on a swivel, I think it makes us much less likely to be victimized by forces that are looking for soft targets to victimize. And I really do believe that. I believe that and I think we make a mistake by conceiving of the non-physically perceptible as other and like some unknown, completely different thing. I think a place to start is the rules that we exist by in our physical experience, and work with those concepts in the metaphysical or the beyond the physical. And this is my own thing, and Alan may disagree, and I think there's room for people to have some different ideas on this. There was a time, and I know that other pagan traditions do a lot of warding against bad spirit stuff. There was a time in modern Asatru where a lot of people spent time and effort, doing a lot of protection ritual and practice to try to stave off all of these bad spirits all the time. I have never been a big fan of doing a lot of that. I think a certain appropriateness of that, given a situation or given a threat, it makes sense. But I don't do that in my real life. Like, I don't act scared of all the stuff all the time, because that's the surest way in my experience to become victimized. When I engage in the spiritual and when I reach out and I open myself to spiritual things, I do so aware and with my head up and my chest out and confidently, not arrogantly to try to flex on malevolent spiritual forces, but confident in my connection with the gods, with my ancestors, with the forces looking out for me on the other side. And I think it's done me well. I think if you start, okay, now's the time of the program I get into one of my mat bouncing stories. There's this guy I used to work with. Okay, first, when I started, in fights a lot of the time. When I finished, in fights almost never. The difference, I believe, was how I carried myself. When I started, I didn't know what would happen if there was fights. What if the guy doesn't leave? What if this? You can smell that fear and that uncertainty, and it starts conflict. When you don't have that going in, like, well, I'll handle it, I guess. And you go in without projecting that, it doesn't escalate the situation, and you're less likely to be somebody that gets picked on. This guy I worked with, he was always getting in fights with everything because he was so scared all of the time about whatever was going to happen. So every situation would escalate because everybody in there could sense that he wasn't confident in what he was going to do. So having a certain amount of confidence when dealing with stuff, and it goes to the, I know this is meandering, but it does go to the question. When you are aware of the spirit world and you accept it as a real thing and not something that you're scared of the unknown of, but that you're confident in your, I don't use matrix in the thing, but that you're confident in your relation to the spiritual, I think it makes you much less likely to be victimized by something metaphysical. And that was a strange and meandering conversation. I hope that it made some sense. Lawspeaker, if you would like to add anything or bring us.
I agree 100%, and I have said many times, and I think I'm echoing Mr. McNallen on this. That the problems in our civilization right now are a soul sickness. That's why we have these aberrant manifestations of psychosomatic illness in all of its many iterations, is that people don't have those psychic defenses against these malevolent forces. And whether you want to think of it as something that's more mundane, at a more mundane level, the whispering of Gimli worm tongue in the ears of these teenagers, about how many genders there are too, or about all these other insane expressions of radical egalitarianism and all that stuff that has never existed anywhere in any civilization that lasted very long. But people don't have that unified confidence because they have been taught that to even discuss these sorts of ideas is wrong think. So it lets those psycho-spiritual influences in because you don't have your defenses up. And when you're sitting alone at home by yourself, it's hard to manifest these defenses. But if there are two of you, or 4 or 14 that get together and say, we are the folk soul and we stand united against these forces that would disintegrate us, then then you can muster the psycho-spiritual energy to defeat the forces of Mordor.
Yeah, I said we get to it. Is the problem a spiritual problem? It absolutely is. And it manifests in a lot of ways. It manifests in the metaphysical plane, on leaving yourself open to influences of negative spiritual entities, certainly. But in a lot of ways, it just erodes your self-confidence. It doesn't make you whole and healthy. The fact that there are psychosomatic effects on your health illustrate this in a profound way. The fact that placebo things, magic feathers work, tells you something. There's a capability there and a health there that, absent external stimulus, you're not accessing. And some of that is because you don't have a confidence in who you are, a pride in who you are. Pride in who you are and where you come from, and sincere faith in your native, inborn, blood-tied spirituality and religion. When you separate a person from that, it weakens them. And it weakens them in a very fundamental way. And we've seen it with a number of different peoples of the world in different ways. I don't think, if we're having this conversation, anybody listening, if you're, an American Indian, if you're an Inuit, I think that, you guys agree with us in this spiritual sickness way. When you're separated from your culture, your tradition, and your gods, leaves yourself open to addiction, to alcohol in their situation, addiction to drugs, addiction to food, addiction to just lazy, nihilistic, wasting your time, an addiction to a lot of things, addiction to self-pity. But it leaves you open to a lot of unhealthiness when you don't have a confidence in who you are, where you come from, and your connection with the divine. We absolutely suffer from a soul sickness. And the thing is, we're a robust people. It's taken a long time for that to fully manifest. You watch in medieval times, Christianity was a much more like masculine, it was a merging of the percentage of our folk soul and the Jewish Christianity was, 99 us, 1 them. Then, 50 years later, 98 and 2 them. Right. Now it's, 70 them, 30 us in a good situation. In bad situations, maybe 90-10. When you get there, you get to a point where people are rootless. Our connectivity to our gods and our ancestors and the spiritual realm of those who've come before us, that's our lifeline that keeps us healthy, that buttresses us against the challenges we face in the world. And that's been eroded. But I'm happy to say we're 50 years into rebuilding that and to healing that. And I've seen a tremendous amount of healing happen with our folk in a very short amount of time. And it's inspirational to see how far we've come in a short amount of time, and given longer, the potential for how far we can come is tremendous. So we've got really good things in the work to heal that spiritual sickness, that soul sickness, as our founder put it. Yeah, if you're listening to this, if you are watching us, if you are listening to this, wherever you find us, if you're a heterosexual white person, if you're an AFA member, awesome. We're glad to have you with us. If you're not, you should be. Get on the team. There's no better time than today. Get on the team. Come with us. We're healing it. We're healing it together. We would love to have your help. We would be grateful for your help. Yeah, so what else we got? All right, for a palate cleanser, Alan, turkey or ham, and why is lamb superior?
I have not had a lot of lamb. I do like gyros, which I understand is a lamb mixture, which I do find tasty and succulent. My lovely girlfriend, Anne, had worked wonders again this year with turkey, which she rubbed with a chipotle rub and then did a bacon lace over the turkey and baked it in the oven like that. So we had the best of all worlds, turkey and pork. I would say that you're not wrong. In my life this week, it has been turkey for the win. And if you're wondering why we had our turkey already, it's because my kids are traveling to be with the other half of their family for Thanksgiving. So we did Thanksgiving over here Sunday afternoon and had all the kids and all that stuff. So I've had my turkey, but lamb would not be wrong either.
So first, you were wise to leave out of the equation beef, which is superior to all of those things, and king crab, which is superior to all the things. Of all the flesh of all the
as
creatures.
long as you have butter, you got to have some butter for your king crab. So even there, you're getting some cow in there.
You don't got to, but it helps. It enhances, but king crab is amazing. Growing up in Alaska, before you're paying the prices some other people are paying for the things, man, I miss the king crab legs. That's delicious. If a lot of people would get like the tiniest little serving and consider themselves fortunate. I grew up in a time in Alaska when you could eat until you are stuffed to the brim and uncomfortable of king crab legs, and that's where you want to be. If my choices are turkey, ham, or lamb, now I'm reading into it by your choice that you were referring to Thanksgiving. A lot of memory and nostalgia and stuff. I like a turkey Thanksgiving. But in any other day out of the year, 364 days out of the year, I think ham is the superior of those things. Lamb, I would like to eat more lamb. I've had relatively little lamb in my life. I'll eat it. It's never one of my go-tos, but I think that's just I haven't had enough of it, and I'm happy to remedy that should one provide me with some lamb. I will say this. Lamb is really gamey, and it's like goat cheese. I didn't used to like goat cheese. I've eaten a lot of goat cheese, and now I, very much like the goat cheese. And I know that it's called something. I just don't want to mess up the French whatever the French noise that it makes is. But it's there you go. It's delicious. And I will venture this further because it's not about the goat cheese, but now that I brought it up, the goat cheese that's encrusted with the berries, sometimes you got cranberries, sometimes you got blueberries. That's fantastic. And that on a cracker, you can't get a better. I don't know if this is a frequent thing, but growing up with the crab and the butter, we used to eat it with Ritz crackers. I know that is a low class like addition to a very fine dining meal, but it's good. You can't beat
saltines, man. Saltines is
whoa. That's no stop
because it doesn't have that Ritz flavor in there, messing up your. It's
not messing up anything. It's enhancing your life, Alan. You're smarter than that. You are an esteemed barrister. You surely you know the value of a Ritz cracker.
Ritz and peanut butter. Now that's what's happening. Although, before we get too far, this whole discussion reminded me of what a joy it has been to see raw milk come back onto the market. My dog, because you can buy raw milk in Florida for your pets, but my dogs share their raw milk with me, and it has been a wonderful experience to return to the joy of drinking milk again.
It just hasn't been around me. I haven't had that much raw milk. I would like to have more.
Dude.
More than just that, what I would really like sometime that I've never experienced, I just haven't been on a farm at the time, whatever, like raw milk. Like, I mean, somebody else can go and milk the cow, but like while it's still warm, I would be interested in that with like the layer of the cream and the stuff. I've never experienced that, and I've heard that's really good. I've never experienced it, but hopefully someday. I'm interested in joining the AFA. Would it be best to fill out the form or to speak with a local folk builder first? Yes, all, both. Yes, don't let. So here's the thing. If you have questions or anything, ask folk builder. Ask me right now. Email me right now at Matt Flavel, Flavel, at runestone.org. I don't want to strong arm you into anything. If you have questions, absolutely get those resolved and ask whoever you need to. But yeah, if you know that you want to join, go ahead and join up. Join up and get involved. And then you can experience stuff. We have things that go on every weekend somewhere, hopefully close to you. I have no idea where you find yourself, but thank you for wanting to join. I would say go ahead and fill out your stuff and join, and we'll get you situated, and you'll get welcomed by a local.
And the thing to say is that if you fill out an application, a folk builder will get in touch with you.
That's what I was going to say. That'll be the thing. So you fill out an application. We'll run it to make sure that there's nothing, particularly scary on the background and that you're not a sex offender. And that being the case, you will get welcomed in by your local folk builder and shuffled into stuff, and we will, go from there. But yeah, I would encourage you to go ahead and join up, and I look forward to seeing your application. And congrats to you for taking that step. What else we got here tonight? Oh, I am about 3 hours from Phrasehoff. So that's a wonderful time to join. 3 hours sounds like a long time. My family is currently about 2.5 hours from Odenshoff. Usually 3 hours is about the circle we draw around a Hoff that people attend from. So it's a little bit of a way for you, but I will invite you. I encourage you. I would love to meet you at the dedication. All of us would. Everybody on this program would. That's a great, first start into being part of Asatru. You can also meet our founder, Steve McNallen. It's going to be a really fun event. The Hoff is awesome. Yeah, we'd love to see you there if you can do it.
And the other thing about, we are all in this mentality that 3 hours seems like a long way, but 200 years ago, it would have taken you an hour to hitch up the team, to plod an hour to get 6 miles to the local meeting house. So getting in your car and putting in the key and driving for 3 hours is not a burden that you should not be willing to overcome to rejoin your ancestral faith.
And so I'm glad that you want to join. As Ron pointed out in the chat, and Ron is a folk builder of ours from New Hampshire, within 3 hours of there, like I'm in my head looking in any direction, we've got a lot of stuff going on. So depending on where you're at in that 3 hours, chances are there's a lot of activity near you, and you have that Hoff within 3 hours of you, which is really, really fortunate for you. So awesome. I am excited for you. And like I said, I'm looking forward to your application coming in, and hopefully we get to see you at the dedication.
Yippee.
Do you know, are creatures like Krampus of Asatru or pagan origins? I'm in Prague and going to see Krampus soon. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't look who it was from. It's from Finn Wraith. Alan, do you know about the origins of Krampus and things of that nature?
Yes, Krampus, I should have read this book already, but I have a couple of books on Krampus. And I know it is an evolution of the, when we talk about, like, does it have an origin in Asatru? Not that I'm aware of. Does it have its origin in the pre-Christian folk way of the Indo-Germanic people? Absolutely. It's manifested in, in hundreds of lore tales, the Brothers Grimm, and just the fact that it has survived into the current era is ample evidence that it is our own creation, and it's a manifestation of our own folkway. Absolutely.
Yeah, certainly it is. I don't have any cool, like, direct connection thing to give you on it. It's absolutely a indigenous Aryan European people's cultural phenomenon celebration. I am envious of you being in Prague. I would love to visit Prague someday. I'm not sure how long you're staying in Prague. I know you talked about being there. I don't know how long the hitch is that you're there for, but that's awesome. And hopefully I'll get to see Prague one day. It sounds absolutely amazing.
That's, as I am wont to say around the upcoming Yuletide season, we need more Krampus and less Santa.
We certainly need, yeah, I wouldn't fault that. Every Yule season, I am entertained by Chocolatey Pete of the Dutch, which I think comes from a similar kind of tradition.
Right.
Finn Wraith says he is there for 1 to 2 years, possibly longer. Well, that's exciting. I hope it is easy for you to get back home if and when you need to. Sounds like it is over there, but good for you. That's awesome. Alan, is there more that you would like to add for our folk this evening in reference to gratitude or anything else?
No, except to express my gratitude again to you and to all of our folk for allowing me to serve our people in this spot. And, really, I would again suggest that that we all be more grateful. have great fond memories of our family expressing gratitude around the dinner table. And I think that's a tradition that we would all be well served to reinstantiate.
Absolutely. We are living in an amazing time. Those of us that have been at this for any amount of time can see all around us the blessings of the ICR manifest themselves. We are very fortunate. We are fortunate for the ways the gods have blessed us. We are fortunate for our AFA family. We have a thriving community of amazing people, and we're doing wonderful things together. The blessings in our life are all around us. They're there for us to see if we stop and take stock and look for them with an eye towards gratitude. It is absolutely Asatru and appropriate to give thanks to the ICR for the things that we have, and to let our loved ones on both sides of the veil know how much we appreciate the way that they have contributed to all the wonderful things that we appreciate and that we have. Let's take this time and this opportunity to be thankful and to express our gratitude to those that have done so much and continue to do so much for us. We're fortunate. Life is good. We live in an amazing time with abundant blessings, and we are very thankful for it. Until next time, hail the ICR, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.